Hi, everybody. Oh, that's exciting. Could somebody help me with this? Somebody help me with this? Great, thanks very much. It's doing something funny. While we get this sorted, I'm the theater guy, so I'm going to ask you all to start by doing something. I want you to think of two things in your mind, and they both involve talent. And when you think one talent that you have no problem sharing with somebody, thank you very much, and a talent that you wouldn't tell anybody if they force you at gunpoint. Good? Turn to the person next to you, or behind you, or in front of you, the person who you don't know, and introduce yourself, tell them your talent. Good. Introduce yourself. What's your talent? And we will end talent conversation in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you for sharing. All right. So, as you said, my name is Matt Gray, and I feel like I am like Frank the Bunny here. I have been haunting talent shows for the better part of 20 years of my life. Now, by talent shows, you might know it as the word theater, and I use that word not to be disrespectful, but we're here to challenge our perceptions. And theater, at least in this country, is still based on the Greek model, the ancient Greek model, which was a great big talent show. We'd get together once a year, and we'd sit in our togas, and we'd watch things, and we would hand out competitions in poetry, and in music, and in dancing. And it's not a coincidence that tonight is the Oscars, which you've probably heard of, unless you've been living under a rock. So theater has, at least in this country, is bound to this ancient Greek model of being associated in some way with a kind of talent show. And what is the Oscars but probably one of the world's most prestigious talent shows, right? As you can see, I'm at Northeastern University now. I was born in Australia to two Canadian parents with British passports. I then grew up in England and Australia and Singapore and Hong Kong. I did my undergrad in Vancouver. I did my grad school in London. I worked in London. I then moved to Pittsburgh. I married a woman from Pittsburgh, so half my family's from Pittsburgh. I then moved to Boston. So trying to figure out what my dialect is, good luck. Now, because I had a background like that, it meant that I am now like constitutionally resistant to labeling and titling, right? I direct plays, but I don't call myself a director. I act in plays and in movies, but I do not call myself an actor. I educate. It's been one of the privileges of my career, has been able to educate a whole new and continuing growing cohort of people in this business. One of my very, very dear friends is nominated for an Oscar tonight. And that's the privilege of my life. Great to make plays, whatever. But when your friends work at that kind of level and make that kind of impact, that's truly special. So, as you see up on the top, up there, I do direct plays. I directed that one here in Pittsburgh, actually. The robot up there is owned by the hyper-talented Heather Knight, who's CMU PhD student. And we've worked on a couple projects with robots together. And that frightening-looking thing's an avatar. And a project where, because I like to think that as much as an educator, I'm a collaborator. And I collaborate with psychologists and lawyers and game designers and computer scientists, and this is a project right now looking at nonverbal gestures, applying them to non-player characters in video games, so that we might have video game characters that look more realistic. But what I want to talk to you today about is sort of like a primer. So I imagine not a lot of people go to the theater all the time, some of us do. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about what theater is, especially what theater might be in the years to come. So when I say the ABCs of acting, what I really mean is the ABCs of acting in the 21st century. As you can probably tell from my intro and what you've heard about my website, I'm really interested in where technology and performance meets. I believe the nomenclature on campus is the intersection of technology and arts, which sounds like I might get hit by a car. So I promise you the capitalization is not my own inability. It's there for a reason. So A stands for art. This is a bowl. This bowl is in the Brooklyn Museum. This bowl was made in the 14th century in Japan. And a couple of things are really interesting about it. Number one, it is beautiful. It is a beautiful object. It is a beautiful object that is not signed by the person who made it. museum, it's in a section called art, but it's not signed like a piece of art. It's marked by the company that produced these bowls. But the people who produced these bowls didn't call themselves artists. They were potters who made practical objects for people to use. Somebody else decided to call them an artist. Something that I find happens an awful lot, particularly at the beginning of someone's career. So let's talk about theater in particular. There's this strong use of the word art. If you want to go and study to become an actor, they probably won't call you an actor in the nomenclature. They'll say that you're an artist. We want you to become a young, burgeoning theater artist. And I think it's a problem. Because all of that is built on one slightly dangerous assumption, which is that theater really is actually artier than anything involving a camera. I don't believe this personally, but I think there is this perception. Now, there are obviously exceptions to this. What you see up here is these are 3 stills from people who are working in the theater in what's usually called the non-traditional theater. Because what they've done is they've blended cameras with live performance. So what do you do if you think that theater is artier than anything involving a camera and you have theater that involves a camera? Well, the answer is you invent a new word to describe it. Multimedia. Non-traditional. Arty. Yeah? So, avant-garde is another word that's used to describe a theater like that. And I come back to the bowl that I showed you earlier. Avant-garde is a kind of ghetto in the traditional theater, right now at least, especially anything involving technology. It's a place where you go where people don't come and see you. And let's be honest, theater's already struggling to get people to come in as it is. If you're doing non-traditional theater, you're lucky if you have 3 or 4 people in the house. If someone labels you avant-garde, who wants to go see that? I'll see a musical, but who wants to go see an avant-garde piece of theater? Yeah. So I come back to this, I think, really fantastic quote about the avant-garde. And what I would like to challenge you with today is that maybe if avant-garde theater became more avant-garde like this, it would perhaps be a little more boundless. Right? So the avant-garde is the demand that art becomes practical again. You all know who this person is? Rest in peace. Philip Seymour Hoffman. Arguably the actor of his generation, the best actor of his generation. And someone who wouldn't call himself an artist. But many people have called an artist since then. This photograph, by the way, was taken literally 2 weeks to the day before he died. So maybe we lay off the word art for the rest of this talk. Let's go to B then. So B stands for business. And anything in the business right now, be it theater, be it show business, the specter that holds all of it are these things, digital cameras. We also live in a world where these things completely have changed how you can see stuff. Why would I go and spend $200,000 at a private university to study to be a performer when I could go to Kickstarter? And if I went to Kickstarter and I bought in at the top level of a lot of movie projects, let's say I put aside 12 movie projects, because a lot of people are funding their movies on Kickstarter. If you buy in at the top level, one of the key rewards you can get is a small role in the movie. Or you can meet the casting director. Or you get a one-on-one acting session with the cast. So if I bought in on 12 of those at $8,000, I'd walk out with a debt a lot lower than I would if I went to a school which was charging me $200,000. So why aren't I doing that? And what are schools doing to respond to something like that? Now, don't get me wrong, I teach for a living. I'm not advocating this is a great idea. Because our business isn't pretty. This is the statement that came out, returning to Philip Seymour Hoffman. This is a statement that came out the day that he died. Lionsgate is the company that makes the Hunger Games. Philip Seymour Hoffman had a principal role in the one that just got released and has a principal role in the 2 follow-ups that are about to come out. He died before he managed to film all of his scenes. So what we have here is the Lionsgate official saying, we're all extraordinarily sad. And if only they had stopped there. I have a friend who's a personal trainer, physical therapist for the All Blacks rugby team in New Zealand, and he said, Matt, I won't do the dialect. He said, Matt, we have a saying in New Zealand, which is everything before the butt is bullshit. I might talk about the fantastic advantages that Kickstarter and distribution systems could have on young people who want to go out and really participate in interesting projects, and that it's go out into the business. But this is what the business is. There's no such thing as show art, it's show business. And even if you're the greatest artist of its generation, and you have a principal role in a movie, your death apparently is going to have no impact. You're just a workaround issue. So if we're going to avoid art, perhaps we should avoid business, so not to get too depressed the first thing in the morning for this talk. So let's focus on craft. I want to go through, I think, sort of 6 key principles that I really work with when I teach, and also when I work with people in the profession. It's why I like collaborating too, and it's stuff that I've learned the hard way from working with actors. And the first is that we're machines. No, beautiful machines, but you're machines. Beautiful biological machines. People will say, oh, it's easy to give it to a robot because robots don't get anything wrong. You know what? Robots make as many mistakes as young actors that I work with any day of the week. We can all make mistakes, but we're all trying to process something in the best way that we can. Plus, theater has taught us, if nothing else, that we're machines. That's not Hamlet. That's Sir Laurence Olivier with a fake skull pressed against his cheek. Right? That is also not Hamlet. But we look at both and we say, sure, but one's a robot and one's a machine and the other one is not. No. So theater comes from a great Greek word, theatron, meaning the place to see. Though in the last 140 years, I would venture, theater has changed its definition from a place to see to a place to sit in the dark and be quiet and shut up and listen. The Greeks called it a place to see. Why? Because theater was used by communities even before the Greeks. And what they wanted to do, why do we get together as a community and watch someone? Because to sit outside of ourselves but see something we can identify as ourselves, we get greater clarity about our morals, our intentions, our focus. We learn more about ourselves by watching ourselves, being able to step away from it and see it in front of us. I showed you the picture of Data, Heather Knight's robot, earlier. I've shown videos that I've done where I've worked with that robot, and when that robot sits up, people go, oh, like it's a person. We're really good at projection. It's not a coincidence that the 2 pioneers of psychology, Freud and Jung, used characters from the theater to define their early ideas about psychology. The Oedipus complex, the Electra complex. Something in theater, something in the process of sitting away and looking at something defines us as human. But I will put it to you that even when we're looking at a Sir Laurence Olivier, really what we're doing is we're anthropomorphizing a beautiful biological machine. So my work really has been focused now on how can I make humans more robot-like? Because if we are able to sort of circumvent the talks about art and keep aside the stories about business, and instead focus on craft, really what I'm doing is how do we formalize and teach what it is that a performer can do? And then conversely, when I work with robots, it's about how can I make those robots seem less terrifying and perhaps more human-like. Rule number 2 is you need a lot of memory. If you're a machine, you need a lot of memory. We know that actors need to be able to memorize lots and lots and lots of text, and going back as far as Shakespeare, you've got to be good at being able to remember things. Number 3, it may seem strange from an acting teacher to say, but you need to learn to code. Because if we're beautiful biological machines, and machines run on code, they eat code, then you need to learn to cook. You must learn to code. Now, there's already code that some performers know, presented to us courtesy of one of the early computer scientists, William Shakespeare. So, we all know this? What's this from? Romeo and Juliet. But soft what light through yonder window breaks. Yeah? Written in iambic pentameter. Dun 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 dun. It's a binary, isn't it? 01, 01, 01, 01, 01. And if it's a binary, right, we look at what the poetry teachers teach us, and they say, well, iambic has 4 main structures because it works in a soft and a strong, or a strong and a soft, which is our 0-1. So that's an iamb, ton-ton. The inverse of that is a trochee, tongue-tongue. We have a spondy, which is 2 strongs. Lovely word, huh? Spondy. Pyrrhus, soft. But that gives us 4 basic mathematical ways of putting it together, right? Leibniz gave us this beautiful early binary machine, which was based on Newton's. Newton's was based on Bacon, and some people think that Bacon wrote all of Shakespeare's plays. So binary and iambic pentameter are code, developed at the same time. And then there's this, which just came out in January. They now think there's only 4 basic human emotions, which corresponds perfectly to our iambic binary system. We're machines, beautiful machines, but we're machines. I gotta get through this quickly. This is not to be abusive. I tell myself this is not me telling you. I'm not special, the work's special. Focus on what the work is, what the craft is, rather than on insisting so hard that you're an artist. I respect arts apologists, and I respect people who are there trying to make the fight that arts organizations are valuable for a community, but then put that into the art. Don't try and justify it. You've all heard of the uncanny valley? Well, it can apply to human machines too. So here's my exhibit. If you don't know who that is, his name is Tommy Wiseau, responsible for a movie called The Room, widely regarded to be the worst movie ever made. I think it is remarkable. And what is truly remarkable about it is a human machine completely getting everything wrong. Tommy Wiseau, a living machine living in the uncanny valley. Number 6 is very worrying to me. We're not growing. In the last 140 years, every major cultural form has grown except theater. I mean, it's grown in some places, but the bulk of it isn't growing. Publishing has adapted. Music has adapted. Cinema and television have changed already. Those of you who probably have heard, according to the internet, House of Cards, is it a TV show? Is it a serialized movie? Films, what does that even mean now? We don't shoot on film. They've developed more in the last 60 years than theater has. And this is sort of where I want to come down on this argument. It makes me sad because there is this there could be a perception, if you were one of these people who believe that theater is artier than film, that this is somehow something that people are doing to theater. What I love about this quote is it shows us film and television did not start with any plan to take over anything culturally. They actually started working in the theater. So what got left behind was theater. Theater decided not to grow, and instead grow resentful about the camera business, and the television business, and the digital media business growing. But they started from the same spring. So I want to end with this, which is live spaces, therefore, need genuine live engagement. And here in Pittsburgh, I want to throw one company at you that I hope you can go and see. This is from a production by a company called Bricolage, run by Jeffrey Carpenter and his wife Tammy Dixon. It was a remarkable piece that used technology, not just computers and electricity, but technology in terms of rethinking how we interact, how performers met audiences, how audiences were led through a story. It was so groundbreaking it made the cover of American Theater, but this is the exception and not the rule. So what I want to leave you with today is challenge your perception of what a live engagement means and what theater means. And rather than theater being a place to go and sit and be quiet and pay attention, but to truly engage. And remember, it's a talent show. So what talent have you brought? Share it with us. Thank you very much.